Well, let's speak to our national reporter, Theo Jacumba. He's outside a television centre in West London. There'll be lots of questions asked then of Dame Carolyn McCall today.
Yes, indeed. Lots of questions. We also saw what happened several weeks ago when Phillip Schofield resigned from his role at ITV. All sorts of bubbled over the last few days. And then, of course, we saw that letter which he put through to the Daily Mail and his following interview he done following his resignation. But today, Dame Carolyn McCall, alongside her colleague Kevin Liger, who works as Managing Director for Entertainment and Media, and Kyla Mullins, who's a General Counsel and, of course, works alongside those in management as the company secretary. But today there will be questions about how they handle safeguarding and, of course, complaints when people have them. In the last few days, though, we've heard from a former X Factor contestant, Rebecca Ferguson. She hit out at ITV bosses on Twitter saying she made some complaints and went to those at the top, and they refused to launch a probe into some of the complaints that she had, particularly when it comes to the care that people have when they enter entertainment shows, and of course the care that they receive after appearing on shows like X Factor and more. But she was told simply that the procedures are there already and that safeguarding is in place. Now, she said that things have to change, and they haven't since she appeared on the show in 2010. But today, though, it'll be interesting to hear what questions will be asked to those ITV bosses, particularly Dame Carolyn McCall. She doesn't have a broadcasting background necessarily. She's from a business background, but it'll be interesting to hear some of the answers that she gives following Phillip Schofield's revelation and, of course, his resignation at ITV. This kicks off mid-morning today.
Thanks, Theo. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew Pearce joins us in the studio for his take, his commentary on all of this. So I suppose some of the areas she has to reassure people is what is she like as regards protecting those who are vulnerable, and the disciplinary procedures that they use, all the usual nonsense and rubbish that they talk about, but they have to investigate. When they investigated and they asked Schofield, did you have an affair with this guy, which is what they didn't ask. I know exactly what they asked. And they then asked the young lad involved in all of this. They need a transcript of what actually took place that day, because that was not a thorough investigation.
No, and look, she's the chief executive. She's a very hands-on chief executive. Phillip Schofield is one of their most marketable personalities, very important for the advertisers. She had a duty to get to the bottom of it, because it was widely rumoured at ITV that this affair was going on. I'd heard the rumours. I knew who the young man was. He was a runner. We know that. He started work there when he was 18. Phillip Schofield admitted the affair was inappropriate but not illegal. And ITV botched it, the inquiry, because it wasn't really an inquiry.
No.
And he lied. He also lied to my newspaper, the Daily Mail, and in the end that's how this story came out, because he made a statement to us saying he had lied.
You see, he is totally discredited. He's admitted he's lied to his colleagues, to the Daily Mail,
presumably to his family too, Eamonn.
Yes, exactly, to his agents, to everyone. And yet, people are deaf to this. People sit and go, poor Phillip, what's he going through? He's been bullied, he's been this, he's been that. The man has lied. He's admitted he's lied. Where do we go from here? Carolyn McCall, what did you do about it? Because she's woke sensitive. She just jumps off. You know, she was, as you say, she's a very hands-on chief executive, but her hands are in all the wrong places, it appears.
Yeah, and Phillip Schofield's whole image was the family man, happily married with kids, while he was having this affair. And how many people at ITV knew that this was a con? I mean, the viewers were being taken for mugs, in a sense. What did she know? I wrote about this in the Daily Mail. What did she know? What questions did she ask? And if she didn't ask appropriate questions, why didn't she? Because she's the chief executive and she has a pastoral duty of care.
And Andrew, just to make it clear, nobody's complaining about him having an affair. No. Nobody cares about him being gay.
No.
And I was very supportive of him when I thought he was gay. But then when I found out the truth of what was happening, you're right, there were rumours, but nobody could pin anything without this ITV investigation. And then what happened to that young lad? Why was he transferred? It was said he requested. That's a lie. That's a lie. He did not request a move. And was he paid off? And if so, do the ITV shareholders know about that?
Well, that's the other point, because he was moved to another show, and then he moved from that show. I understand he moved abroad. The Daily Mail made quite clear in some of its reports that money was involved. Was it redundancy money, or was he paid to go abroad to get him out of the way, pay for the problem, sweep it under the side? There are shareholders who've got an interest in this, and it's also ITV is a major employer. It's got a public service broadcasting remit too. So these are important questions. Look, I'm gay. When he came out in The Sun in that very heavily confected interview on the front page of The Sun, and we know that the editor of The Sun, or certainly a senior Sun reporter, was on the studio when he was making his moving statement about coming out. I wrote a piece and I was saying, well done, mate, I came out 40 years ago. It's a lot easier to be out than in, because it's better to tell the truth for everybody. But as I wrote that piece, I knew the rumours that Phillip Schofield had been in what I would have considered an inappropriate affair for a man probably 30 or 40 years older than one of the most junior members of staff at ITV.
But as we know, Phillip has gone, and in many ways, fait accompli.
Yeah.
But what I suppose the question marks remain over the management of This Morning, what they knew, the Martin Frizzels as well at ITV, and also it spreads beyond the safeguarding of other programmes at ITV. We've had in the last few days Rebecca Ferguson from ITV X Factor coming out saying, complaints that I made weren't followed up. Welfare wasn't looked into. And, of course, it's an incredibly sensitive area in this day and age.
How many people have died on Carolyn McCall and Kevin Ligo's watch?
And look, Ranj Singh, who was the resident doctor, he said he'd complained about a culture of bullying. He called it a toxic culture. And he said his reward for the complaint was he was effectively booted out of ITV.
Well, let's take a little in-depth look at Carolyn McCall, and we'll come back to you in a sec, Andrew. We can sort of look back on what led us to where we are today. McCall held a number of top jobs, ranging from the Guardian Media Group to EasyJet in 2018, when she became the CEO of ITV.
Yeah, that would have qualified her for the job, wouldn't it? In 2019, Jeremy Kyle was axed after 14 years on air, following the concerns of the treatment of guests after the suicide of Mr. Steve Diamond.
The following year, the host of the popular show Love Island, Caroline Flack, ended her life, which led McCall to reaffirm her network's commitment to focusing on duty of care.
2021, Piers Morgan walked off the set on Good Morning Britain and basically walked out of ITV.
And then last year, both Holly and Phil were embroiled in Queuegate, skipping hours of queuing to see our late Queen lying in state.
2 months later, David Walliams left one of the broadcaster's flagship shows, Britain's Got Talent, after inappropriate comments about contestants came to light. Fast forward to this year.
And Schofield resigned from This Morning following what he called an unwise but not illegal affair with a much younger male colleague. And so McCall will have to answer a lot of questions during this morning's sessions, and we will cover it live here on GB News. Do you think she can survive it, Andrew?
It's interesting because she was summoned by this committee. The ITV were before the committee a couple of weeks ago, but that was a routine thing talking about various media legislation. She was summoned by this committee. She did not want to go. You're mad if you try and defy a request from a select committee, because it's not a request, it's an order. I suspect what will happen is the committee of MPs, well, as usual, there'll be an open goal and they'll miss it. They'll hit the corner flag.
Yeah.
That's the trouble.
But I'll tell you what is also trouble. Who can actually speak about this and about ITV when they're employed in the industry? My friend, no disrespect to you at all, because we rate you so highly, but you were the 27th person we approached to talk on this, and everyone else was afraid to. And I can totally get that. I totally understand that. Indeed, you do appearance work for ITV, and I said to people, please make sure Andrew's OK with this, because these things have a way of equaling themselves out.
I read about it in the Mail, wrote a whole page about Carolyn McCall. It's a very important story. He's a household name. I think ITV have handled this incredibly badly, and I think the committee is right to talk to her, because she's the boss, and the buck stops at the top.
Well, especially because she gets so involved.
Yeah.
She gets so involved.
And
the stories I could tell.
And she's paid an awful lot of money.
£3 million a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she got a bonus.
Yeah.
And have you seen the share price of ITV lately?
It's doing well again. It had a little dip, didn't it, over the whole...
Because there was a lot of speculation that Holly wouldn't survive, but she's back. And I don't know Phillip Schofield very well. I knew him a bit. I liked him, but I thought this was an accident waiting to happen for a very long time.
No, if you knew him, you wouldn't like him. False. False.
Right. OK. Well, you know him better than anyone.
OK, mate. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.